When someone mentions Vancouver, most people picture a wealthy, safe, and almost perfect city, but that image is far from telling the whole story. There is a side of Vancouver that rarely appears in travel advertisements, a neighborhood that has become known around the world for people passed out on the sidewalks, motionless, hunched over, and scattered throughout the streets. One of the most shocking criminal cases in Canadian history, a crisis that is completely reshaping the city, and even a threat capable of putting millions of people at risk. And believe it or not, that's only the beginning. Today, you're going to discover why Vancouver may be hiding one of the darkest sides of all of North America. Few people realize that one of Vancouver's most well-known places isn't a beach, a park, or a famous landmark. It's the Downtown Eastside, a neighborhood that has gained worldwide attention for revealing a reality completely different from the one usually shown in advertisements about the city. While Vancouver is often presented as one of the best cities in the world to live in, these few city blocks expose one of the greatest social contrasts in all of North America. The most striking part is that this transformation happens almost from one street to the next. In just a few minutes, you leave behind modern skyscrapers, upscale restaurants, and apartments worth millions of dollars, only to enter an area where thousands of people struggle with daily hardships. It is this dramatic contrast that leads so many visitors to say it feels like they've entered an entirely different city. The Downtown East Side is home to a large number of people living in extremely vulnerable circumstances. Many struggle with drug addiction, mental illness, unemployment, or have simply lost every opportunity they once had. As a result, the neighborhood has become Vancouver's main hub for social services. Clinics, homeless shelters, community kitchens, charitable organizations, and medical teams work almost around the clock to provide support for those in need. But there's one detail that many people don't know. Because a significant portion of the city's support services is concentrated in this area, people from different neighborhoods and even other cities travel there seeking help. Over the years, this has turned the Downtown Eastside into the epicenter of an incredibly complex social crisis, one that no simple solution has been able to solve. People visiting the neighborhood for the first time are often left in shock, not only because of what they see on the streets, but also because of the overwhelming contrast with the rest of Vancouver. Organized crime is also part of one of Vancouver's lesser-known realities. For decades, the city has appeared in investigations involving international criminal organizations, largely because of its strategic location on the Pacific coast. As Canada's largest port handles millions of shipping containers every year, Vancouver has become a major gateway for goods arriving from Asia, attracting the attention of groups involved in illegal activities as well. Among the most well-known cases are investigations into money laundering schemes, smuggling operations, and financial transactions linked to criminal organizations. Several official reports have pointed to organizations associated with the so-called Chinese triads using sophisticated networks to conceal illicit funds through businesses, investments, and casinos. These investigations attracted so much international attention that they gave rise to the term Vancouver model, which experts use to describe a sophisticated money laundering system identified in the region. One of the main reasons this model was so difficult to combat was its discretion. Unlike the image many people have of organized crime, these operations rarely involved violence or drew public attention. Much of the activity took place behind the scenes, involving financial transactions, shell companies, and international money movements that could go unnoticed for years. Casinos in the region also became the focus of these investigations. On several occasions, authorities identified unusual patterns involving the movement of large sums of cash, prompting the government of British Columbia to establish special commissions to investigate potential weaknesses in oversight. As a result, regulations for financial institutions, casinos, and high-risk real estate transactions became significantly stricter. Another factor that has always drawn the attention of authorities is the enormous volume of activity at the Port of Vancouver. Every day, thousands of shipping containers arrive and depart, supplying markets across North America. Monitoring such an enormous volume of cargo is a constant challenge, which is why Canadian authorities regularly carry out anti-smuggling operations. One of the topics that has generated the most public debate in Vancouver in recent years is the rapid growth of the city's population of Indian origin. In several neighborhoods, and especially throughout the metropolitan area, the presence of this community has become increasingly visible. New restaurants, grocery stores, temples, shops, and cultural events have emerged at a rapid pace, completely transforming certain areas. For many people, this represents an example of diversity and economic growth. For others, it raises questions about the impact of immigration on a city that already faces serious challenges related to housing, infrastructure, and the cost of living. The increase in Indian immigration did not happen by chance. Over the past several years, Canada has adopted policies designed to attract skilled workers, international students, and professionals in industries facing labor shortages. As a result, thousands of Indian citizens have chosen British Columbia as a destination to study, work, or build a new life. Vancouver and neighboring cities, as well as communities such as Surrey in British Columbia and Brampton in Ontario, have received a significant share of this migration. In some neighborhoods, the transformation has been so rapid that simply walking down the street makes it impossible to miss. Business signs in Punjabi, specialty South Asian grocery stores, traditional festivals, and Sikh temples have become part of the everyday landscape. In certain parts of Greater Vancouver, Indian cultural influence has become so prominent that many longtime residents say it feels like they are living in a completely different community from the one that existed just a few decades ago. However, these changes have also fueled intense public debate. One of the main concerns involves pressure on the housing market. Vancouver already has one of the highest housing costs in the world, and rapid population growth has increased demand for homes to buy and rent even further. Although immigration is only one of many factors influencing this situation, it frequently remains at the center of public discussions about urban planning, infrastructure expansion, and the city's ability to accommodate new residents. Among all the crimes that have marked Canadian history, few have had as much impact as the case of Robert Pickton. For years, he appeared to live an ordinary life, running a pig farm on the outskirts of Vancouver. To anyone passing by the property, everything seemed perfectly normal. But behind that routine was one of the most disturbing criminal cases ever recorded in the country. The investigation began gaining momentum in the late 1990s, when an increasing number of women started disappearing throughout the Greater Vancouver area. Many of them were living in vulnerable circumstances and vanished without a trace. As time went on, families and community organizations began questioning why so many of these cases remained unsolved. For years, critics argued that the disappearances were not receiving the attention they deserved, placing even greater pressure on law enforcement. The major breakthrough came in 2002 when police searched Robert Pickton's property. What began as a relatively routine investigation quickly turned into one of the largest forensic operations in Canadian history. The entire farm was sealed off, and forensic specialists spent months examining the land for evidence. The work was extraordinarily difficult due to the size of the property and the challenging conditions at the site. As the investigation progressed, the case attracted international attention. Robert Pickton was eventually charged with dozens of murders, making him one of the most notorious criminals in Canadian history. He was ultimately convicted of 6 murders, although investigators stated that the actual number of victims was likely much higher. To this day, the case remains one of the most serious criminal investigations ever recorded in Canada. One of the most alarming events in Vancouver's recent history took place during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. In a relatively short period of time, the city experienced a significant increase in discrimination, harassment, and hate crimes targeting people of Asian descent. The issue quickly drew national and international attention, especially because Vancouver is home to one of the largest Asian communities in North America and has long been recognized for its cultural diversity. Reports began emerging from different parts of the city. Many people described being subjected to verbal abuse in public places, intimidation, physical assaults, and other forms of violence motivated by prejudice. The situation became so concerning that community organizations began documenting these incidents to better understand the scale of the problem. Within just a few months, hundreds of reports had been recorded, revealing that the number of incidents had risen dramatically compared with previous years. Experts point out that periods of crisis often encourage the spread of misinformation and the search for scapegoats, which can fuel discriminatory behavior towards certain groups. According to numerous organizations, this was exactly what occurred during the pandemic. Although the overwhelming majority of the population did not participate in this type of behavior, a small minority was enough to create fear among many families and alter the daily lives of part of Vancouver's Asian community. The effects went far beyond statistics. Some people began avoiding going out alone at night. Others reported feeling unsafe while using public transportation, and business owners noticed changes in customer traffic at their establishment. In neighborhoods known for their large Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Filipino, and other Asian communities, the issue quickly became one of the top concerns for local communities. When people talk about the greatest dangers facing Vancouver, many immediately think of urban problems. But there is a far quieter threat that has concerned scientists for decades. It cannot be seen, gives off no visible warning signs, and can remain hidden for centuries. We are talking about the Cascadia Subduction Zone, a massive geological fault located along the Pacific coast and considered one of the greatest natural hazards in all of North America. It is from this region that the so-called Big One could eventually strike, the popular name given to the massive earthquake that experts believe will occur again someday. The term became widely known because it describes an event capable of affecting hundreds of miles along the west coast of Canada and the United States. Unlike smaller earthquakes, which occur relatively often and frequently go unnoticed, the Big One would be a far more powerful event with the potential to cause severe damage to the infrastructure of numerous cities. The reason for this concern lies in the way the Earth itself works. In the Cascadia region, two enormous tectonic plates remain in constant contact. Over the course of years or even centuries, they build up an immense amount of energy because of the friction between them. At some point, that energy can be released suddenly, producing a major earthquake. It is a natural process that has occurred for thousands of years and will continue regardless of human activity. Researchers know this has happened before. Geological studies have identified evidence of a massive earthquake that occurred in the year 1670, an event that even generated a tsunami recorded in Japan on the opposite side of the Pacific Ocean. Because there were no modern written records in what is now Canada at that time, scientists were able to reconstruct much of this remarkable event by combining geological evidence with historical Japanese documents. Few cities in the world combine such extreme contrasts within such a small area as Vancouver. Traveling just a few miles is enough to witness a transformation that seems to defy logic. On one side are neighborhoods filled with waterfront mansions, luxury cars parked along the streets, and homes worth tens of millions of Canadian dollars. On the other are people struggling every day to pay rent, living in temporary housing, or searching for a place they can afford to call home. The contrast is so striking that many residents say Vancouver is really two completely different cities existing side by side. What makes this even more remarkable is that Vancouver continues to rank among the best cities in the world for quality of life year after year. Its safety, breathtaking natural scenery, infrastructure, public transportation, and access to services have earned it an international reputation as an almost ideal place to live. But these rankings do not always tell the full story. The cost of living has risen so rapidly that even families with solid incomes now struggle to keep up with rising prices. The housing market is one of the clearest examples. For decades, the prices of houses and apartments have increased far faster than the incomes of local residents. In some neighborhoods, even relatively ordinary homes are worth several million Canadian dollars. For people dreaming of buying a home, this often means saving for many years, or giving up on that dream entirely. Those who rely on rental housing face similar challenges, as finding an affordable apartment has become increasingly difficult. This surge in housing prices has been driven by several factors at the same time. The city's room for expansion is limited by mountains, the ocean, and protected natural areas. Meanwhile, Vancouver has continued attracting new residents, international students, and skilled professionals from around the world. The result has been steadily rising demand for housing, while the supply has expanded at a much slower pace. With more people competing for fewer homes, prices have skyrocketed. The effects extend far beyond home ownership. Many workers in essential industries such as healthcare, education, transportation, and retail now live farther and farther from the city center, enduring long commutes every day. Others choose to share small apartments with several roommates just to reduce expenses. In some cases, entire families live in homes much smaller than they would like, simply because they cannot afford the cost of larger housing.